Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Management, a VUCA perspective. We are discussing core concepts and now we have reached the exact epicenter of all things that are marketing, which is the brand itself. The brand is at the soul of any product, any organization, any service that is dealt out into the larger world. And this is the true center core of any particular marketing activity. And therefore, understanding how brands work and understanding how to deal with their communications, their posturing, their narratives, all of these things become extremely important for marketing managers, or should we call them brand managers, to take into consideration and completely attend to right from the ground up. So, we are at module number 18 and we will take the voice of one of the most important minds in contemporary marketing and brand thinking, Seth Godin. Seth Godin says, your brand is a story unfolding across all customer touchpoints. He actually drives the entire thought process of how brands should be seen, how their narratives should be understood in the outside world, and that entire storytelling is what we are going to get into as we go further. So, storytelling is something which is ages old. It has existed since cave dwellings by human beings, and brands only have now started getting into that particular space where they create their own narratives. So, narratives are the oldest way to get messages across and have been part of the human culture, and they have been there since time immemorial, and now it is very, very crucial and central to branding as an exercise. With that, we enter our conversation for today, which is brand narratives and fundamental understanding of narratives. The power of branding is at the core of this entire conversation, and hence we need to understand how building and managing brand value is critically important for any marketer worth their salt. Brands represent the most valuable intangible assets in the entire organization's portfolio, and creating a powerful brand requires for the perfect balance of artistry and scientific understanding. So, that precision is something which is learnt over time, which is learnt over experience, and today in the age of data and AI, it is learned through a variety of touch points, and AI is your assistant, your wingman to that particular endeavor, and it covers all of those touch points and captures data, analyzes them, gives you readouts and gives you suggestions to manipulate the narrative in a much, much better way as things go forward. Every exceptional brand has as its core an outstanding product or service which has to be there, because otherwise any amount of narrative creation will take you towards the death of that particular brand, because the product or service will not live up to the expectations set about, and then it will lead to a complete downfall of that particular brand. This is very precisely put into place through visionary strategy and impeccable tactical implementation. So, you have to have the long foresight and be able to implement it as you go along in your entire brand journey, and therefore it creates enduring value for both the consumers and the organization which is putting the brand forth. Let's look at the example of Gatorade. Gatorade reinvents a brand which started in 1965 in the University of Florida, where researchers specifically looking to combat dehydration came up with the brand, and they created a product which led to the name Gatorade. It was crafted for American football players, and they took that after the team's mascot. The name Gatorade came from there. So, The category was pioneered by Gatorade overall, and they established and created that sports drink which was a refresher and hydrator for all people in that sports space. It gave instant electrolyte replacement in the body and created a market that never existed before its introduction. And PepsiCo acquired that particular brand, and it also acquired Quaker Oats primarily for the Gatorade brand, and therefore invested about 13 billion to secure the sports nutrition powerhouse. The brand was thereafter refocused, and you had a decline from 80% to 75% due to emerging competition, and hence Gatorade successfully reconnected with its athletic heritage and managed to win back turf where earlier it was losing market share. Now, Gatorade had a very strategic transformation. It showcased new vision in its offerings. It expanded beyond just the 7 billion sports drink market and established about 20 billion worth of sports and nutrition industry as a market space where they actually tripled their potential market opportunity. Also, in terms of product innovation, what they did was they launched comprehensive product ecosystem, and through that they got approximately pre-workout fuel, which was their 01 Prime, and the second one was Perform, which was during the exercise, and the third one was Recover, which was post-workout nutrition. So they actually split the entire sporty activity into three different segments. The first one was Prime, the second being Perform, and the third being Recover during the post-workout stage. And they segmented the market very clearly, strategically targeting the three distinct consumer segments with tailored product offerings addressing specific athletic performance needs and commitment levels of the individual athletes. And they positioned their brand so that they could talk about winning from within, because the stoking of the ability of the athlete to win came from personal endeavor and gusto, and that is where Gatorade stood by its particular audiences. Now, what was the strategic brand management process in the entire format for this? You first identified and established your brand positioning. What would you actually stand for? This helps you articulate your brand's unique value proposition and competitive advantages in the marketplace. The second part to this is you plan and implement your brand marketing. Here, you develop an integrated marketing strategy which covers a maximum choice of media options and handpicks where your audience is typically found, so that you can create conducive messaging which addresses their ideas, their thought process, their needs, their desires, and you communicate how your brand's core message is seamlessly working in all these touchpoint areas. Then you measure and interpret how your brand has actually performed by itself or vis-a-vis competition in these spaces. You analyze the key metrics and consumer insights to look at how it has performed overall. And then finally, you grow and sustain the brand value by leveraging the successful brand elements and adapting to whatever market changes come your way, and ensure that it stays relevant throughout and it grows from one point to the other in strength. Now, what typically is a brand? According to the American Marketing Association, a brand is a name, term, sign, symbol or design or a combination thereof created to identify the goods or services of one seller or group of sellers and to distinctively position them against competitors. So, it creates a very specific niche, a very specific offering from an intended seller, so that no other people can stake claim to what that particular offering is. Then it goes beyond products, because a brand's fundamental purpose is not just to showcase that it has a product or service at its center, but rather it generates value that transcends the functional benefits of any product or service and creates meaningful, enduring emotional connections with its intended audiences. Then there are mental structures behind a particular brand. So, powerful branding establishes cognitive frameworks that help consumers organize their knowledge and marketplace offerings are also well understood. It helps simplify the business making decision process and simultaneously delivers substantial business value to the organization. So, having spoken of mental structures, let's try and understand what the essence of branding really stands for. Here, there are certain differences which are created in the minds of consumers, and branding is the core point from which the differentiation really stands apart. Branding differentiates those products in meaningful and memorable ways that resonate with target audiences. It gives it a structure, a name, a certain form factor, certain associated defining other features that make it stand apart from any other similar product or service. It also helps in building knowledge. How so? It helps brands communicate a product's identity and creates a residual memory of that particular brand in consumer's mind and ensures that values that the brand stands for are conveyed. So, whenever you see a brand thereafter, you remember what that particular brand stands for and how it positions itself in the market, and helps in forming connections, because over time and over repeated exposure to a brand, consumers connect and understand how the connections are really working in their favor. This practice of branding has flourished for centuries as a sophisticated method to distinguish one producer's goods from another's. So, in Shakespeare's As You Like It, there is a famous line which says, "A good ale needs no bush." Now, this line, very cryptic though it may sound today, actually means that there were inns or taverns during medieval European times, and inns and taverns which brewed their mead, because mead was what was being consumed very, very famously and frequently. Taverns which produced good quality mead, they were known amongst people, and to showcase that their mead was good, they used to hang a sprig of mistletoe outside of their tavern signs, and that actually led to the most initial forms of branding in the Western world. It was like a maker's mark. So, in medieval times, these were various things which brought their way into common business practice. Further to this, there were guilds. So, guilds were specific groups of craftspeople who had a certain skill set, and entry was very guarded to these guilds because you needed to be of a certain skill set or above, a certain caliber or above. And so, therefore, there was a quality assurance and protection against inferior imitations trying to take away business by giving cheaper imitations. So, this concept evolved in the fine arts, and artists began signing their works. So, they would actually write their signatures at the corner and establish that this was authentic piece of art. This helped creative ownership, and that is a tradition that continues to influence modern branding principles as well. So, in the historical evolution of branding, you had medieval origins where European craft guilds established the first systematic use of trademarks, symbols that stood for a certain guild or members of that guild, and you expected that artisans stamped those goods with a certain distinctive mark to protect both the craftspeople and consumers from counterfeit products. Then you had artistic authentication, which was in the form of signatures. You next had industrial transformation. So, in 19th century, mass manufacturing got into place. So, hence there was stamping of the maker's mark or trademark across all products coming out of a central factory, and this required branding at scale. So, therefore, consistent visual effects and visual identities were crafted and incorporated within products, so that consumers could navigate an unprecedented flood of similar factory made goods to actually reach the product that they wanted and they were most happy taking home. In today's day, contemporary brand ecosystems thrive. Here, there is a sophisticated omni-channel experience which is orchestrated around customers. And when you speak of omni-channel, it means that whether it be digital, whether it be physical, the attempt by a brand is to keep a synergy across all experienced interfaces, and therefore the consumer gets a similar experience across all interactions, and they are at the end of the day able to experience the brand in all its glory. So how do meaningful differences get created? By brands. Brands give you product related differentiation. Industry giants are there like Gillette, Merck, 3M. They have created patented or copyrighted designs which only they can manufacture, and they provide you with a certain amount of efficiency or effectiveness in using their particular products. That helps protect them against any amount of foul play by competition and any amount of encroachment as well. At the same point in time, consumers who expect that particular consistency and quality are benefited because they subscribe to a certain brand's quality standards. So both these things come into play simultaneously, and it establishes powerful competitive advantages because once you are married to the brand, then you expect that certain quality to be delivered, and that is what you buy or pay a premium for. Then there are at times non-product differentiations. For example, in contrast, the luxury powerhouses of the world such as Gucci, Chanel and Louis Vuitton have secured market leadership by deeply understanding how the consumer aspirations and emotional needs are structured, and so therefore they create compelling competitive advantages through crafted brand imagery. This is the kind of person who you would find wearing a Patek Philippe watch. This is the kind of person who would actually sport a Carrera pair of glasses. This is the kind of person who would be wearing Jimmy Choo shoes, and so forth. So this is why that crafted brand imagery helps tell a story of the kind of consumer they want in their tribe, and that is typically where they create exclusive experiences and have stylish products that transform that experience into powerful symbols of identity as well as status. Now, the most enduring brands establish themselves as both authentic and essential, and they are genuine in their offerings and true to their core values. This is how people tend to trust what they receive from that particular brand. And if you do this to a fine art, the brand truly transcends being a mere product choice and becomes an indispensable, meaningful presence in its customers' daily lives and identity. For example, the iPhone itself. The iPhone has become inseparable for certain people who cannot use any other operating system or any other format of phone nowadays. They've become so attuned to what the iPhone can do for them, what they expect from it, the kind of services that they get, the kind of enmeshing of technology with hardware, and the kind of experiences that they can derive after using the features of the iPhone. The iPhone never says that it has got a certain megapixel camera, but it does showcase to you the kind of short effects or the videos that you can generate out of shooting from an iPhone. So that is the expectation that drives the iPhone narrative, very distinct from any other phone manufacturer for that matter. So let's look at a few examples now. J.Crew transformed their entire branding. How did they go about doing it? They went from a struggling brand to a fashion powerhouse. They were a once preppy retailer on the brink of irrelevance. J.Crew orchestrated a remarkable turnaround, tripling the revenue by reimagining itself as an influential creative force in the fashion industry. So their entire propositioning went from just being a retailer to being a creative provider of apparel. And here they became innovative and yet they stayed recognizable. So it balanced continuous innovation with consistent brand identity. There were designs, there were cuts, there were silhouettes which the brand used to its advantage. And it introduced fresh designs each season while maintaining the distinctive aesthetic that customers instantly recognized as a J.Crew piece of apparel. Now, this helped create passionate advocates from the consumer side for the brand. J.Crew has actually fostered extraordinary customer loyalty, and it has showcased how they have inspired people to dedicatedly support them as loyal advocates of the brand. High-profile endorsements have been received from influential figures including First Lady Michelle Obama and Vogue Editor-in-Chief Anna Wintour. So all these people have actually pushed the brand ahead in a major way. Now, this is typically how branding creates a definitive space for itself in the consumer's mind. There is a universal application of branding where there are physical goods, Tesla's innovative electric vehicles or Pfizer's market leading Lipitor medication that revolutionized cholesterol treatment. These have physical goods at the core of the offering, and those then take up all the shape, form factor and delivery of the branding. There are services like Singapore Airlines renowned luxury flying experience, Blue Cross, Blue Shield's comprehensive healthcare coverage network. So all these have the service level agreement which is being delivered and believed in by consumers. Then you've got at the retail level Nordstrom's exceptional customer service, or Dick's Sporting's goods, specialized athletic equipment offerings. Nowadays in India, you've seen Decathlon taking it up in a big way. Then you've got various places like Sydney's iconic harbour, the Leaning Tower of Pizza, India's Taj Mahal. All of these places have their iconic heritage which they carry, and they get the branding across for a variety of reasons, and they are identifiable. The core of branding is to make it identifiable and very distinct. Then there are organizations. U2's distinctive musical identity is very much them, and similarly social activism or the American Automobile Association's trusted roadside assistance reputation is again phenomenal. So people remember by what the organization does for you, and then there are ideas. So abortion rights messaging from across the political spectrum or free trade principles championed by economic institutions have become ideas which have become very powerful unto their own effect. So branding extends far beyond just traditional products or services and can get into a variety of spaces like this and have representations and reasons for people to believe and follow that particular brand to the next level. Now, let's look at a sporting brand, a football club, Real Madrid, and how it built a global sports brand. So they had three revenue streams. They had broadcast rights, they had global sponsorships, and they had match day revenue from which they made their money. In terms of stars they bought and they used in their team, their star power strategy attracted generational talents like Beckham, Zidane and Ronaldo. And at the top, they became the world's most valuable soccer team, and they had $3.3 billion valuation worldwide. So Real Madrid surpassed Man U in 2013 to become the world's most valuable soccer franchise, affectionately known as Los Merengues. The historic club experienced a remarkable resurgence when billionaire construction magnate Florentino Perez assumed leadership in 2000, and he was a football aficionado. The club has masterfully transformed into a truly global brand, and it has generated substantial revenue internationally through strategic partnerships with premium brands including Adidas, Emirates and Spanish banking giant BBVA. This international approach has cemented Real Madrid's position as both a sporting powerhouse and a commercial juggernaut. So this is typically how brands are able to create those liaisons with other co-partnered brands and are able to create a name for themselves. So the role here for brands and engaging with consumers is in a variety of spaces. So for example, brands have a promise, and that promise is something which is a powerful covenant between the company and the consumer, and it sets clear expectations of what consumers can expect from that particular brand. When you buy brand, you reduce your risk by delivering a consistent, reliable experience across all the touch points that you're available at. And then there is an expression of your identity as a brand. So consumers strategically select brands that reflect their personal actual identities and they vibe best with or they gel best with, and these also reflect their aspirational identity, their enablement of self-expression, and how they socially signal who they are, what they do and what kind of tribes do they want to be part of. It also establishes relationships because strong brands evolve beyond transactions into meaningful relationships with consumers, attributing personality traits and emotional connections to their preferred brands. So brands actually shape consumer perceptions. They change the way people think and they affect their mindsets in a very, very distinct way. So the power of brands perception is huge. Studies show that people might pay $100 more for a generic leather bag but willingly spend 10 times more for the identical bag bearing a Louis Vuitton Hermes or a Gucci logo. This price premium exists not because of functional differences but due to the psychological value that the stamp of that particular brand carries with it. And through experience, people learn that consumers have long-term relationships and direct product experiences because marketing tends to expose them to those experiences. And together as a brand, they process this, they discover which brands consistently meet their needs and which ones fall short and therefore by the wayside. Consumers continuously get overwhelmed today because there are too many choices flooding their brains. So hence, trusted brands serve to make a decision making shortcut and they reduce the perceived risk and simplifies the process of purchasing very, very much. Cameron Hughes is a wine brand model which actually did this very well. They had a negotiant approach where sources exceptional surplus wine from prestigious wineries and global brokers and capitalizes on market inefficiencies. So wherever they see a gap, they get their wines in that particular space. They create premium blends which are sophisticated limited edition wines and they have the eponymous Cameron Hughes label ensuring that quality is there while they also increase the accessibility of those particular wines. Then there is streamlined distribution because the brand looks after the outsourcing of distribution worldwide and the logistics takes care of it bypasses the traditional distribution chains and their associated markups and gets the right kind of wine into consumers' hands. And finally, the value proposition here is that there is extraordinary value because when comparable to $100 California Cabernets, they sell for $25 or less, democratizing the access to premium wine experiences because there is a Cameron Hughes in the entire process. So strategic brand value for businesses comes through a variety of elements. First and foremost is quality assurance because once you've established yourself as a brand, the quality you have supposedly told you will deliver is what people will hold you to. And so therefore quality assurance is the first thing that a brand must adhere to. Next, there is demand stability. So whenever on demand, if you are able to provide people with what they are looking for both in terms of product or service, then brand loyalty increases automatically. There is competitive advantage to be had because strong brands establish significant entry barriers into their space. And then you've got premium positioning because if you're a brand and you have a following, then you tend to get 20 to 25% higher margins than competing products. And finally, because of all of these things, you get operational efficiency because brands streamline their entire inventory management and accounting processes. Everything becomes under central pipelines and so therefore it reduces the entire cost because all of these things are done with a central process taking care of all these things. The new Coke story is something which people took from brand loyalty. Now, Coke has always been one of the most loved refreshment brands in the world. The marketing challenge Coke was facing was that it faced mounting pressure from sweeter tasting Pepsi Cola in highly publicized taste test challenges across the world. Now here they invested some time in research, about 4 million in extensive market research, and they found that blind taste tests consistently revealed consumer preferences for the sweeter formula, but the moment the brand was revealed, automatically people would gravitate towards Coke because that was what the public wanted to be seen drinking. Then there was a new Coke launch in 1985. It boldly replaced the century-old formula with a sweeter variation, inadvertently triggering a nationwide consumer rebellion because people went adamantly against that sweeter Coke formula and wanted the old Coke back. So there was huge consumer backlash and passionate customers responded with angry letters and wanted to organize protests and even gave real threats of going legal against them because they said that they were the real thing. So that is why Coke had to again go back and come back with classic Coke. And that is when, after 10 weeks of a disastrous launch, company reintroduced the original formula as Coca-Cola Classic to appease the loyal customers. And the unexpected outcome of this was the failed introduction paradoxically strengthened the original formula's market position and generated renewed brand loyalty, improved consumer attitudes, and significantly increased the sales for the brand. So the new Coke revival was showcased with very popular TV series on Netflix, Stranger Things. The limited edition revival, 34 years after its notorious market failure, new Coke makers made a strategic comeback through a cleverly orchestrated promotional partnership with Netflix in 2019. There was a strategic pop culture placement. The iconic beverage was featured prominently in the period drama 1980s set third season of Stranger Things. And authentically, it recreated the era while introducing the product to a new generation because they did not have the backlog of the older formula. Now, there was calculated nostalgic marketing for the older version. So, it was available for a strictly limited time through select retail channels and online. And the campaign brilliantly leveraged the nostalgia while transforming a historical business blunder into marketing gold because there was enough conversation which was generated around it. A lot of people from that particular era had things to relate and they regaled their younger generations with those stories. So that is how a lot of nostalgia was built, a lot of conversations were crafted, and youngsters actually had the chance to taste both formulas side by side and could write about it or read about it or speak about it, and that created the necessary buzz. So all of these things make for good money, and that means that there is a certain financial value in brands. So what is the financial value that can be derived in brands? First and foremost, there is valuable legal property. The brands are legitimate legal properties which an organization can hold, and they're exceptionally valuable legal assets for the organization. They can significantly influence customer purchasing decisions and loyalty, and that's why they are guarded very staunchly. The acquisition premium for a brand works during mergers and acquisitions because companies buying other companies have to pay premiums because substantial premiums come for strong brands, justifying the investments made on projected future earnings and potential. There is also shareholder value, where investment markets recognize that powerful brands consistently delivering superior earnings and profit performance will ultimately create enhanced long-term value for shareholders, and therefore that is the sentiment which drives the value of a brand upwards, which therefore translates to something called brand equity. When talking about brand equity, we are trying to translate the monetary value of brands into actual figures. So by definition, you see brand equity represents the premium financial value attributed to a company specifically because of its brand ownership. It quantifies the commercial power and market advantage that a strong brand provides. What is the financial perspective on this? From a valuation standpoint, brand equity encompasses the circulated net present value of all projected financial returns a brand will generate throughout its commercial lifespan. And finally, there is an accounting side treatment. So, in financial statements, brand equity is captured within the broader accounting category of goodwill. And then this is a comprehensive monetary value assigned to all intangible assets a company possesses, and that is how you add a certain monetary metric to ensure that you understand how a brand performs in the world of marketing. Before transformative merger and acquisition waves of 1980s, exemplified by the landmark 25 billion NJR Nabisco buyout, corporations invested sums in brand development without standardized accounting methodologies to accurately measure or report the substantial value these brand assets created. Nowadays, it is far more scientific. So, goodwill versus brand equity is something which needs to be understood. Goodwill really is something that encompasses both a company's tangible assets, which are property, infrastructure, materials and investments, as well as its valuable intangible assets that contribute to market value beyond book value. So, here you will have established brands, you'll have intellectual property, for example, patents, you'll have proprietary creative work. So, you'll have copyrights to each of these pieces of work, you'll have specialized expertise and processes, you'll have operational licenses and permits, strategic distribution networks that they are privy to, then you'll have distinctive organizational culture which is ingrown within the organization, and you will have effective management systems again developed within the aegis of the organization. Now, how does it move towards a brand equity focus? Here you will see brand equity represents the specific subset of goodwill that isolates and measures the value generated by a company's brand identity and reputation in the marketplace. Significantly, brand value often remains underrepresented in financial statements despite potentially exceeding the worth of tangible assets. This disparity has elevated the importance of sophisticated brand valuation methodologies in contemporary financial reporting, mergers, acquisitions and strategic planning processes. And there are certain people who invest in the entire process to give brands a certain understanding of how much their brand truly gets valued at. So, how do you measure brand equity? You've got three approaches. One is the cost approach, where you quantify the brand equity as assessing the historical investment for brand development and the kind of cost incurred for that. The second part is the market approach, where you determine brand equity by analyzing the price premium between branded and unbranded products and how you adjust the ongoing investments in branding activities. And the third is the financial approach, which calculates brand equity as the net present value or NPV of projected future earnings directly attributable to the brand's influence. So, all of these factors are ways in which brand equity is measured. Now, the financial approach to brand valuation is the one which has very highly defined metrics, and so therefore, that is something which people look at very, very strongly. It computes future cash flow, estimates what the contribution of the brand is and applies a risk adjustment to see what kind of numbers can be achieved. And if you look at customer based brand equity, because customers are finally the demand aspect of the company's economics. So, by definition, you will see brand power is something which a customer based brand equity represents, and it showcases the additional value of what's that in a brand's name that contributes to a product or service beyond its functional benefits. So, by just name, how much power are you able to exert in the market? Consumer influence wise, strong brand power fundamentally shapes how consumers think, feel and behave towards a particular product, because the brand name has now come into the consideration set, and that transcends rational decision making, because people have affinities which are emotional towards brands as well. Now, there is a certain differential effect here. The essence of brand power lies in its differential effect, how a particular consumer's knowledge about a brand creates distinctly different responses to identical marketing activities. So, the blind taste test is one example. If you covered eyes, people would go for the Pepsi. If you opened their eyes, then people would swing towards a Coke. So, these things help you understand what brand power a particular organization actually exerts. So, here brand power creates differentiation as well. There are unique brand associations which it first and foremost professes to give. Then here it provides powerful, distinctive and memorable associations in customers' minds. In the case of Toyota, there is reliability. So, renowned for engineering dependable vehicles that maintain value and performance over time. This is what Toyota has always stood for. Then, if you look at Hallmark, it is all about caring. So, it cultivates the deep emotional connections through authentic expressions of sentiment and relationship in their various offerings. Then you've got Amazon, which talks about convenience. So, here it dominates through unparalleled customer service, vast selection and frictionless transactions for the end consumers. Now, when you talk about key benefits of brand power is very, very widely effective. So, it gives you performance perception first and most, because how you are able to actually see how your brand is performing is something the metrics show. Then you've got customer loyalty, how many people come to you and then stay on. Then there is competitive resilience, how much are you able to fend off price wars or differentiation from competition because you have a brand. Then you look at price flexibility, what kind of a range can you sell in just because you've got a brand on your packaging. And then there is trade support, because of a certain brand, how much does trade really help you with pushing that particular product out there in the market. Then there is marketing efficiency, because the higher your appreciation is amongst customers, the lower your customer acquisition cost will be, and automatically it will lead to lesser marketing spends for you as well. Going further, you've got growth opportunities, where you actually showcase newer segments which you can tap into using the same product or service. And then you've got talent attraction, because you need the right kind of people running the show within the organization. So all of these factors come to your aid when you are looking at benefits of brand power. So brand knowledge again is a strategic investment, because you have to understand how the brand is performing, and you have to create a consistent and constant communication with the end consumer. So you prefer quality over quantity as a regular rule of thumb. The strategic quality and focus of your investment ultimately matters more than the total amount spent. Then there is investment mindset, because every marketing dollar represents a particular investment in building valuable consumer brands and the knowledge and perception of it amongst consumers. And finally, there is a strategic bridge which covers the link between the two. So the brand equity serves as a critical strategic bridge connecting your past marketing efforts to future opportunities, and seeing if there was success at one point in time, how can it be replicated? If there was failure at a certain point in time, what can we learn from that and not repeat? So these are factors which come into play. Then there is consumer permissions for brand extensions. Bengay tried to launch aspirin. Now consumers rejected this extension because it conflicted with Bengay's established identity as a topical pain reliever, whereas aspirin was more of a all over headache remover. So therefore it created a cognitive disconnect and presented as an ingestible product, whereas Bengay was more application based. Similarly, Cracker Jack cereal, the extension failed because consumers couldn't reconcile the brand's caramel coated popcorn and peanut treat positioning with a healthy breakfast option, because it was not seen as a healthy option. Then there was Smucker's ketchup. Despite Smucker's expertise in fruit based spreads, consumers couldn't transfer their trust to tomato based condiments, because it was not their core competency, or at least was not seen as such by consumers. So when you have brand power, you will try and see which particular approach works best for you. So in this case, there is an indirect approach where you evaluate the potential source of brand power by systematically measuring consumer brand knowledge structures. So you check how much they know of you, and then there is a method that reveals the depth and breadth of what consumers know, think of and feel about the brand, and the cognitive emotional foundations of brand strength. Other metrics like brand awareness levels, specific brand associations, perceived quality, ratings, and brand loyalty indicators collectively reveal the multidimensional relationships consumers have with the brand. In a direct approach, the tangible impact of all brand knowledge is done by analyzing consumer response for the marketing elements. The method quantifies how brand perception translates into marketplace advantage and economic value. Now, key performance indicators include price premiums, consumers willingly pay, significant differences in purchase intent between branded and unbranded offerings, and measurable sales responses to various marketing initiatives. So this is something which is an ongoing process, and the choice is really for the organization to choose which particular stance to take. So these approaches work synergistically. They provide commercial brand intelligence when used together. To leverage brand power, as a strategic asset and guide effective marketing decisions, marketers must thoroughly understand that the foundational source of brand equity and precisely but how these sources drive specific business outcomes. So, you will have to look at how the entire system actually finally ends up driving business outcomes. Now, when it comes to brand audits, you keep assessing the brand's health over time. You take comprehensive evaluation across a variety of metrics, and a brand audit actually provides a successful systematic culmination of the complete brand's health and examines the overall impact it creates with consumers and measures the health and performance of it. There are source identification aspects where you check the source of your brand equity and pinpoint which specific factors drive the brand value. Then you improve your strategies by taking drivers that are actionable and strategies that work for the leveraging of brand equity in the competitive markets, and you also regularly monitor the shifts and changes and whatever you have implemented, the impact of those items on the brand. So, an effective brand audit delivers profound insights into consumer perceptions, brand positioning, and the critical relationship between the two. It empowers marketers to maintain a constant awareness of brand's performance, enabling more strategic, proactive management and agile responses to market changes. Again, something which is in the space of ensuring situational awareness and therefore VUCA. How do you track the brand? You monitor performance over a variety of elements across time. So, you look at establishing what was the baseline, then you look at consistent measurement, look at reliable standardized metrics to benchmark brand performance across time periods. So, you will look at sales figures, you will look at top of mind recall, etc., and all these factors help you create that consistent measurement. Then you understand how your performance is going and reveal exactly where, how and what extent your brands creating meaningful value in the marketplace and track how the responses from the consumers are. Then finally, you've got decision support because the brand tracking audit actually empowers marketing items with actionable intelligence for lower confident data driven decision making, and as things go up you are able to push more and more complex decisions into the brand's marketing mix. Kellogg's as a brand revitalized themselves through Project Signature. Here what they did was they did a comprehensive brand audit and initiated it to establish clear strategic direction and market positioning. For this, they had a collaborative approach. They did a strategic year-long partnership with global brand authority Interbrand to reimagine their market presence. Interbrand looks at the brand equity aspects and also looks at how communication works in that space against the competition. So, Interbrand and Kellogg's together did this, and then you had a brand refresh where implementation of compelling new tagline, modernized design elements and contemporary logo adaptation was what was brought in so that the brand stayed remarkable and rememberable, but at the same point in time it overwent a facelift and got into contemporary space. So, key transformation elements of Kellogg's brand, you had a new tagline, "Let's make today great," and it replaced the outdated messaging, which established a more meaningful emotional connection with modern consumers. There was a core purpose which was defined, and strategic reorientation happened around the brand's fundamental revision and mission of highlighting the power of breakfast to consumers and on a daily lives basis. Then you had master brand strategy where it showcased that integration of the Kellogg master brand to all its marketing initiatives, creating stronger brand cohesion and recognition. And finally, you had digital consolidation because that is where the consumption of all sorts of communication was happening and in real time as well. How does brand equity stack up against brand valuation therefore? Brand equity is the comprehensive value of a brand in both the financial and consumer perspectives. It takes into consideration all the positive associations, customer perceptions, financial advantages that the brand generates in the marketplace. Whereas brand valuation is the specialized process of calculating the precise financial worth of a brand, and this methodology quantifies the brand's monetary value and expresses it in specific dollar amounts or financial statements. So that gives you an understanding of how brand equity differs from actual brand valuation. Now, brand equity represents a holistic concept that integrates both the quantifiable monetary value and the qualitative consumer based strength and influence on the brand. Whereas brand valuation can talk about any leading corporation and have typically constitution of more than 50% of its total market capitalization, and it underscores the tremendous financial significance of developing and maintaining powerful brands that help it own the category in a big way. So if you have really got very powerful brands, you will see how capable your organization becomes. The founder of Quaker Oats, John Stewart, had this line to say. He said, if this business was split up, I would give you the land and bricks and mortar, and I would take the brands and trademarks, and I would fare better than you. So that is how much value he added to brands as such. So he actually declared that this is the extraordinary worth of brands, and it underscores the intangible assets of a company, and it has to be carefully cultivated so that it can exceed the physical assets that it possesses in the marketplace. When it comes to the strategic importance of branding, there is no way you can lower this down in any form or function. Brands are always strategic assets, and they help you define the entire narrative of that particular organization, its products, its services, the way it will create portfolios, the way it will come up with product lines, the way it will engage with new customer statements and segments. That is something which will continually keep happening. So hence, brands have strategic asset value, and brands constitute a company's most valuable intangible assets, because you can't see them, you can't taste them, you can only understand a brand. So that is where it's coming from. Again, brand building is both art and science. So there are specific consumer based data touch points and their reactions which are measurable, and then there are certain aspects which are artistic, silhouette based, certain design based elements which increase the likability of a particular brand, and they create memorability, and therefore it also drives the overall brand vision, and it gives you complete access across all touch points in a variety of ways, because it's a creative representation. Finally, you've got brand power, which creates tangible value. So the tangible value for a brand is how brands shape customer perceptions. They justify their premium pricing, and they actually get enduring customer loyalty in the longer run. So all of these factors come into play for brands. Then you've got the metricization of the same. So you can add measurement drives which actually brands receive success. There's systematic brand audits and performance tracking, which enables organization to maintain what kind of brand health is being exhibited, and it will help make informed strategic adjustments in the brand's marketing path. Also, brand management requires a lot of vigilance, which we can't stress on enough. It is a completely difficult and very trying marketplace out there. So hence, sustaining brand strength remains a constant need and constant attention seeking activity for a company, and it helps you proactively evolve as a particular corporate entity. And with the swift adaptation in market changes, it will allow you to emerge with the topmost numbers in market dynamics. So brands are a very strong and very deep-seated part of marketing. Like we said, they are at the soul of marketing. So understanding brands, what they do for organizations, and how deeply entrenched they are in that particular space will take a lot of learning and experience, and hence we have to probe this in a much more detailed way and fashion, so that we are able to glean the maximum learnings out of the entire process. So towards that end, we will look at the design aspects next, on how brands can be designed, what textures, what colors, what feel, what characterization, what identity elements can be built into a brand, so that it exudes a certain kind of personality. It is almost human-like, or at least sentient, at least from the propositioning, in a way, so that people can understand that this particular brand is cut for me and I also want to be part of its tribe. So there is a mutual acceptance of consumer and brand, which helps create the robustness of the relationship between the two. So next time around, we will be discussing how to create and design robust brands. So until next time, I'll take my leave.
Hello, I am Shikha Dikshit. I teach psychology and I am with the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Kanpur. Today I am going to talk about what is social cognition. Social cognition is a research area in psychology which explicates the various cognitive processes that people employ to understand the social world. So essentially it is about sense making of the social world, which involves understanding other people as well as understanding oneself. Understanding others requires understanding their traits, their internal tendencies, their contextual aspects, motives, feelings, emotions, etc. So as we can see, this is a very complex process and requires a massive amount of information processing. Even for small decisions, for simple decisions, people have to process a large amount of information. The main perspective or the approach which is used in social cognition is obviously the cognitive approach, and which is the study of mental structures and processes. The main paradigm which is used is the information processing paradigm. As far as the range of topics in social cognition is concerned, the range is very wide, from individual level sense making to collective sense making. As far as views of cognitive sense making are concerned, there are three major dominant views in social cognition: the naive scientist view, the cognitive miser view, and the motivated tactician view. The naive scientist view emerged from research done in causal attribution, and this refers to detailed and systematic processing of information and sense making in the social world. However, it is not always possible to make detailed engage in detailed cognitive processing, and hence people act as cognitive misers in many situations. So whenever there is lack of time and cognitive effort is less, then people involve in using certain strategies which are functional, yet they are like mental shortcuts. So this is the cognitive miser approach. However, the question that comes to the fore is that which one of the two strategies is more important? The answer is provided by the motivated tactician view. And according to this view, people can either use the naive scientist approach or the cognitive miser approach as and when required, and they can switch over between the two approaches when required. So these are the three major views which are utilized to understand cognitive sense making. The topics that social cognition covers ranges from cognitive social cognition to social cognition. So topics such as causal attribution, understanding of attitudes, social schemas, unconscious cognition about social situations, the use of mental shortcuts or heuristics in decision making, social identity, and stereotyping processes are some of the topics. In addition to this, a large number of social cognitive psychologists also understand collective sense making in terms of social representations.